Cryptocurrency fans, hold on to your hats. This September 29th weekend, prepare to have everything you know about crypto blown out of the water. Live at the Salt Lake City Main Library, it's the Dash Network's Dash Retreat. You've never seen anything like it before. 3 mind-blowing days of discussions and insights, featuring presentations by Ryan Gold, Joel Valenzuela, Sam Westrich, Sven Rosbach, and there's more, much more. Did you say trivia? We've got it. Go head-to-head with up to 99 others and not 1 but 2 Dash trivia competitions.
Who will be left standing?
The winners will walk away with some sweet, sweet Dash. It's cryptocurrency madness. Have a vision for Dash? Capture your thoughts in a video or write-up and share it with us. If you're nearby, join us in person. You can claim a seat, but you only need the edge. If you're not nearby, join us online. Sessions will be streamed to Dash Incubator's YouTube channel. For more information, visit dashincubator.medium.com. Proudly sponsored by Big R Canada, Splawick, Tante Safana, and anonymous donors. The Dash Retreat. Be there.
Dang. I think I'll be there. Are you going to be there, Ryan?
I have to be there. I'll be there.
Whoa, let's rewind. I was not the
Wow, that was too much for a Monday morning.
Well, so for everyone who knows, maybe we've got to cut Ryan a little slack today. The poor man burned his hand this morning, but even way more beyond that in terms of what we have dealing with on the show today is OG, longtime community member, Toknormal, who is here with us in the flesh. Peter, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's really pleased to be on the show.
Is it Toknormal or Toknormal?
Talk.
Okay.
It's Glasgow parlance for speak normally.
Oh, okay.
So joining us from Glasgow then, very good. Well, so everyone knows this was a pleasant surprise. Firstly, as some of you probably know, we were looking for somebody to come on the show this week who was against the proposed Treasury block reward reallocation that's currently up for a vote in the Dash Treasury. We were looking for someone all last week, didn't get any takers, and then at 6 a.m. Saturday morning, Toknormal reaches out, haven't seen from this guy in months, maybe years, and says, not only am I against decreasing miner rewards, I think they should be increased. So this is an argument that I don't think we've really seen anywhere. And so let's just hop right into it. Can we do that, Peter?
Yeah, sure. I'll fire away. I just wanted to start by saying that there isn't really a lot in what I'm presenting that is in conflict with the contributions that were made last week on your show. And I think most of those points were well made regarding mining centralization and that type of thing. What I'm going to present here is just a recontextualizing of the whole the Dash ecosystem, looking at it through a different lens. So as I say, I think those points are well made. I just think they need to be solved in a different way rather than with recourse to the block reward, the block reward ratio between miners and masternodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present what I think is an archetype behind the reasoning that has been presented over the last 2 or 3 years for moving the block reward further in favor of masternodes. And I feel that during the course of that time, going right back to when Ryan Taylor, ex-CEO of Dash Core Group, aka Baby Giraffe, when he first made his presentation in support of this, there's this subtext in all the arguments that alludes to this idea of a company where the company has contractors, it has resources, and it has an output. So these contractors form part of the input, the resources form part of the input, and mining is seen as part of the cost for that company. And that has led to the sort of rationale behind the decision-making along the way for arguing for the reward ratio shift. And I have felt for a long time, and I did write it back at the beginning, that this archetype which I call the widget production archetype. So I'll refer to it as that from now on, the widget production archetype, that has sort of informed the thinking behind the reward ratio shift. I have felt that that's been the wrong archetype, that it doesn't adequately represent what's really going on. And in fact, that it can actually lead us to diametrically opposed decisions to the ones that are actually optimal for the network. So what I'm going to do is, because I've been invited to present the opposing case, I'm going to present an alternative archetype that I think is more appropriate to what's actually going on, that better represents what's going on, and that is the two-tier market archetype, where the blockchain and the proof of work algorithm is seen as a trustless market, and hash rate is seen as capital being provided by first-time buyers of the new supply. And so that they are actually purchasing the supply off the chain as it comes off the chain. So it's like a sort of slow drip IPO, if you like. And where masternodes are not participants in that market. So seen from this perspective, which I'll call the two-tier market perspective, from this perspective, the first-time buyers, aka miners, we call them miners, but I'm not going to call them that. From this perspective, that they would be seen as market buyers of the new supply. Then you have the masternodes, and because they are not part of that market, they are not turning up with their capital to buy the new supply. There is no economically sustainable basis for funneling the reward to masternodes beyond the value, the numerically measurable value that they provide to the network. Right now, I can hear all the masternodes throwing their toys out the pram at this point, and chucking bricks at the screen and immediately going to vote. Right, I don't want them to do that, right? Because the other side of this coin, sorry for the metaphor, is that I think this will be beneficial to masternodes because their main interest lies not in the reward. Miners' main interest lies in the reward. Masternodes' interest lies in capital gain on their node collateral, the 1,000 dash you have to put, because that can wipe the reward out in an instant. And in my view, the purpose of the reward should be to augment the capital gain on the collateral. And I aim to show that this approach is more optimal for doing that. So what I'm going to do,
1,000 dash collateral, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, the 1,000 dash. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll quickly, if you can put up that first slide, Amanda.
You got it.
What I'm going to do is just compare these two competing archetypes, and I think that the community has, or at least the governance community has at least a due diligence obligation to look at it through this lens, from this perspective, and make sure that the proposal works. I'm going to argue that it doesn't work, and that we need to at least suspend the vote, if not reverse it, until we sort of sit and work through these ideas, right? But I mean, that's for the voting community to decide, obviously, right? This is just my view. So the two archetypes are the widget production model, which is, I think, has informed much of the reasoning so far. Then we have the two-tier market model, which is what I'm presenting at the moment. And here are just a couple of differences by way of illustration to show how different the conclusions are from looking at things, from the perspective of these alternate models. In the widget production model, security is the primary role of the protocol. Ryan, you expressed that last week when you said the whole reason we have mining is to prevent attacks. You said that it's to assemble blocks of transactions on the network and then propose a certain block of transactions that says all of these transactions are valid, and I propose that these transactions to be set in stone. In an ideal scenario, we would do away with mining altogether. So I can understand that from the perspective of the widget production model, because those are all just technical hoops that have to be jumped through. And from the widget production archetype perspective, you just want to make them as cheaply as possible to minimize your costs. The costs to this notional company that I'm suggesting doesn't exist. Okay, as far as hash rate goes, in the widget production model, hash rate is contracted for this purpose. So once again, we've got recourse to this notional archetype of a company where the miners are contracts to the company doing a job, and we just want that job to be done as cheaply as possible. And then the third item is minimizing the cost of security, thereby hash rate is beneficial. So that's the kind of conclusion that you come to if you look at it through the widget production model. And in last week's show, the word efficiency was mentioned a lot, where efficiency was improved by lowering the amount of hash rate that the network needs. I'm going to present what I think is a different definition of efficiency today, and I think the one that's more appropriate. So if we go to the two-tier market model, we can see how these things look from a different perspective. In this model, supporting a trustless market for coin distribution is the primary purpose of the protocol. So we're basically selling it's like a slow drip IPO. Again, we're selling the coin for the first time. We're marketing the new supply to willing buyers who are turning up with their capital and obtaining the coin in the process of capitalizing the new supply, drip by drip. Hash rate is the currency of that market. So we're sort of redefining hash rate from an overhead to simply a medium for investors' capital to flow through, to pass through. And later on in the second part, I'm going to look at that in more detail. I'll just mention it here. Then in this model, what is seen as cost in the widget archetype is actually capital flow. So for example, imagine a family going on holiday. They're in the United States. They live there, as maybe most of your audience does. And they are going to Rome on holiday, and they've got all their cases packed and everything, and they're going to buy some, let's say, $5,000 worth of euros. You could argue that that is a cost in the sense that they're spending the $5,000 on the euros, right? I had $5,000. I don't have it anymore. This is a pain in the neck. This is a cost to me. But we know that what's actually happening is that, yeah, your dollars are disappearing, but you're acquiring euros. So you're actually doing a capital transfer operation. You're moving your capital from one medium into the next. So in that, if we just nip back to that slide for a minute, in that archetype, what is seen as a cost in the widget production perspective is actually a capital transfer. So it follows from that. This is where the danger in conflating these two arises. It follows from that if we try and minimize costs because we're looking at it from the wrong archetype point of view, what we're actually doing in the other archetype is throttling the blockchain's ability to absorb capital. So I'll go on and quantify that a little bit in the next.
Can I ask a follow-up question just real quick to make sure I understand what you're saying here?
Mm-hmm.
That third point on the two-tier market, what is seen as cost in the widget archetype is in fact capital flow. I'm probably understanding this incorrectly, but do you mean that that the risk or the cost is that the Dash compared to your USD or Dash Euro exchange rate will fall, or did I miss?
No. what I'm referring to there, maybe I do have a slide that sort of pictures this, but what I'm referring to is that the investor starts off with $1,000 of savings denominated in dollars. They then convert that to electricity in the same way as the traveler converts his dollars to euros. That electricity then gets converted to hash rate. That hash rate then gets converted to a coin that they acquire. So in that loop, each of these costs, if you like, seen as costs in the widget production model, are actually just media for the capital to move through. So in other words,
by
mining, we call it mining cost. That all that's happening there is the investor is converting their $1,000 to the currency that the trustless market uses for that investor to acquire the coin. They have to acquire the hash rate that the trustless market needs to use. It can't use a national currency, right? Because that would mean using a fiat currency, and that would require a trusted third party to host the market. So that's what happens in secondary markets like Binance and Kraken and so on. In the primary market, Satoshi or whoever invented this system, which I think is a pretty amazing system, they had to come up with some kind of currency for this primary market to release the coin for people, and that currency is hash rate. I actually tried to think of another way you could do it, and I couldn't think of any. It has to be something, a natural resource that is purchasable and costs money. So I'll maybe defer this to because I do have a slide that goes into this in a lot of detail in the second part.
Okay.
But I don't want to dismiss your point, because that is very important. But I just want to come back to it when I've got to that slide. Okay, I'll just quickly move. This is a wee bit about primary markets. I'm not going to dwell on this, just other than to say that it's a well-established concept. It is the source, the first place you buy the security or commodity. In other words, most people know what a primary market is in investment, and if you don't, it's easily look upable. Okay, I now want to just run over 3 little fundamental points. So I'm going to move away from the overall argument and just go back and revisit a couple of first principle points to do with the blockchain that I feel have been the basis for false assumptions amongst us over the years, and have led to sort of confusion in reasoning out, what we should do in terms of these protocol adjustments. The first one is just defining ROI. Second one is looking at this idea of the extent to which masternodes are entitled to receive reward based on the 1,000 dash that they've put down, which is a bit of a nebulous concept, but to me it's led to sort of quite a lot of arbitrary decision making. And the third one is the idea of mining cost defining the price. So I'm just going to look at these in a wee bit of detail. ROI, the 1,000 dash entitling the masternodes to the reward, and mining cost representing price. So ROI, first of all, okay. ROI is return on investment. Now, I think we have to remember that the I in investment is always denominated in the saver's native currency. So if your investments are all in dollar denominated because you've got them in stocks and shares or whatever, you're going to be measuring your ROI using a denominator that is denominated in US dollars. And the way that a Dash Masternode ROI would be measured according to an outside investor would be the value of the 1,000 Dash at the start of the year. So let's say they purchase their Masternode on the 1st of January. And then at the end of the year, let's say you've got 1,200 Dash for argument's sake, because you've been receiving rewards. you would then value that entire holding in dollars and form that ratio there. And your ROI is 1 minus the fund value at the end of the year over the initial investment, right? Now, what that means is that we cannot directly use the Masternode reward as a depiction of ROI. So if we say the ROI is 7% because the Masternode reward, you can calculate it, how much dash of, 1,200, let's say 1,200 at the end of the year, 1,000 at the start of the year. So that's an ROI of 20%, right? We can't do that because the value of the entire holding at the end of the year might even be less than what you paid for it at the start if there's been capital loss on the collateral. So that's
why I don't call it ROI. I call it APY, just annual percentage yield. Because right. ROI, like you said, that is a different notion to me.
Okay, but even if you call it annual percentage yield, you still have to express that in dollars because the investor is investing $1,000 worth of savings. That's their starting point. They're not starting with 1,000 dash, they're starting with $1,000. So the yield by any normal market expectation is the yield in dollars. So it amounts to the same thing. The thing is, the main point that where I think this is relevant is that just by giving masternodes a reward, we're not automatically creating an ROI for the investor. And it may be if the funneling of that reward to the masternodes causes corruption in the capital flow plumbing that is adverse, that reward may actually cause a negative ROI. We can't know, we can't know just from the fact that there's a reward here. That's really just the main point. Is just a question of definitions here.
And what would corruption in capital flow plumbing be?
That would be loss of capital out of the network somehow. So investors in the network are putting money into into Dash as an asset, and there are unearned profits being taken out. So that the flow of capital is losing some of the injection that it receives at the secondary market. So there's capital coming into the secondary markets and the primary markets being, according to this perspective, the blockchain, secondary markets being Binance and Kraken. So all this capital is flowing in, buying Dash. If there's a drain, that would represent a corruption of the capital flows.
Is that the same thing as saying if the market capitalization in terms of dollars is $500 million at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year it's $400 million, so you lose $100 million in capital in capitalization? Is that what you're talking? Would that be a loss of capital flow in your definition? No, something different?
No, it wouldn't necessarily be that. That's just a devaluation. The kind of thing I'm talking about is, let's say, and this is where a company perspective may be relevant. Let's say you've got a company that is operating with cash flows. So they have revenues, they have costs, and they also have a valuation. And the valuation is ostensibly based on how efficiently those revenues are used. So if the company takes its revenues and is constantly paying dividends with all the revenues instead of investing back in the company, okay, that may hold up the share price for a certain amount of time, but eventually the company starts shrinking because as a going concern, as an active operation, they're not able to grow their operation, right? Because there's this loss, or it could happen because they have an uneconomical resource. Let's say they have 100 contractors with diggers, and the diggers charge 10 times the going rate to that company for their services, right? That would be a drain on the capital flows within the company, cash flows. It's usually called in an accounting sense, right? So because there's that drain, this leakage, it ultimately has an effect on the valuation, because people look at that and say this is not efficient, and so the valuation is really a separate thing, but they're linked.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure that we at least get through all the slides that you have prepared. So maybe we could move on and give us an idea. Right. I don't know how many questions to ask now versus later.
Okay. Well, I'll get through part one. Then there's a natural break, and then I'm going to move on to the macro picture, and that may actually address some of the questions you've got at the moment. Right. This is just a pictorial depiction, right? I'm going to talk for a minute about the idea that masternodes are entitled to a reward just because they put down 1,000 dash, right? So this has led to sort of the idea that we can just arbitrarily set the reward at any level we want. You know, let's try 40%, let's try 60%, you know, because we think that's appropriate, right? In my opinion, there are very definite economic delineations where this works and where it doesn't work. So if we think of a gold shop, a gold coin shop, we go into the shop, it's a sort of darkened lighting, there's a big long counter, and a person behind the counter, the dealer, selling gold coins.
Are we supposed to be on the next slide?
No, not quite yet, because it's that's a different one.
You're controlling the slides, I assume then.
I'm actually able to control the slides, by the way. I just can't put the stack up. Amanda has to do that.
Okay.
So Joe and Jane go into the gold coin shop. Joe does not have any existing gold coins. Jane has got 10 gold coins under her floorboard. They both arrive at the shop and ask for a quote for one more incremental gold coin. Now, the dealer obviously isn't going to say to Jane, "Oh, you're already a holder of 10 gold coins, or you can have this for free, you know, because you've already bought 10." No, that doesn't happen, because the two of them are on a level playing field as far as that new coin coming off the gold stream goes. They're both going to be quoted the same price. Jane's going to get quoted $1,900 for a 1 ounce coin, and Joe's also going to be quoted $1,900 for a 1 ounce coin. So they're both in the market. It doesn't matter that Jane's already a sort of bit of a gold insider as far as this new supply, and she's in the market. Now, I would argue that masternodes are in exactly the same position, right? Having put down 1,000 dash, they paid for 1,000 dash, they received 1,000 dash. When the next dash comes off the production line, they are in the market for that dash just as a miner is, and they are required to pay for that next dash coin just as any other non-masternode holder would be, right? Now, you can make a case for them being rewarded costs that they incur due to running the masternode, right? But I don't think a case can be made for rewarding the masternode beyond the direct costs that they incur, right? And I think that's how outsiders would see it as well. And if I move to this slide here, for example, this is a sort of pictorial depiction of things. Here we've got the people queuing up for the primary supply, right? These are the primary market buyers. Buying the coin for the first time. They're arriving with their capital that they've converted to hash rate, that they are going to then supply to the blue guy who represents the proof of work algorithm. And that guy is going to give these customers a coin each after they supply their capital. Then you've got these ghosty guys who have been brought in to hold up the tent poles because it's a windy day. Right. Now, the ghosty guys are not in the queue. They're not in this market for the new coin. They don't have any money as far as the new coin goes. So if the blue guy starts tossing over every second coin to these ghosty guys two things are going to happen. First of all, from an intuitive perspective alone, we can see that this is going to cause some kind of corruption, which we would need to think through, what happens, because the guys over here are paying for it. The ghosty guys are not paying for it, but half the supply, every second coin, is being sent to them. They're obviously going to be quite happy about it, but over time they may not be happy. And this is my point, because over here you've got these spectator people watching the show, and they may take the view that, wait a minute, this plumbing doesn't seem right, this capital flow plumbing doesn't seem right to me, I'm not going to invest in this, because they're not on the inside, they're on the outside, yet to risk their capital. So that is that's the idea of, I just wanted to delineate the extent to which having the 1000 dash and using it to run a Masternode warrants an economic basis for a reward being sent in that direction. So I think that's debatable. The final thing of these, the final point of these kind of three little back to basics point, that is the idea that of cost and when cost equals price, right? Now, this is something that goes back to the original days of when Ryan was proposing the first block reward reallocation. And I had a couple of exchanges on the old Dash website where Ryan argued that cost of mining does not equal coin price. And when I thought about it, I thought, right, I can see how he can argue that from a certain perspective, right? Once again, this widget manufacturing perspective. In the widget manufacturing perspective, it's true that costs don't necessarily equal sale price, because you can have cost of sales, you can have overheads, you can have production costs, and then there's this discontinuity here. And that discontinuity has the effect of you being able to arbitrarily set the sale price. So you can make a widget for $100 and you can say, I'm just going to sell this for $200 because the market will accept it. And I don't have a lot of competition. So fine, you make 100% profit. But that's not the only perspective in this. The other perspective is from the customer's perspective. From the customer's perspective, they're then coming along and buying this product. And in this case, there is a formulaic relationship between cost and price, which is cost, price is simply cost divided by the number of units. So if you buy 3 tubes of toothpaste at $30, the cost to you is $30. The price per tube is therefore $10 per tube. Now, I'm going to argue that this perspective on the right here is the one that applies to mining, or what I would call primary purchasers of the supply. And that's because when the primary buyer of the supply, aka miner, comes along and they put $1,000 worth of hash rate into the network and they receive 1 coin, I'll show in just in a couple of slides' time how that by definition represents the price of the coin. In other words, in that case, the sale price of the blockchain to the primary supplier, the primary market, to the primary buyer, is the cost that they mine for. But by definition, right? Because they're on this customer side. They're not on the supplier side. So sorry, I would argue
that's how it should be, or that's how it is.
I'm saying that's how it is.
Well, let me just ask a follow-up on this, because the cost to mine a coin in terms of dollars, your capital cost amortized over some amount of time for the miner itself, plus your electricity costs, that doesn't necessarily equal, in fact, it almost never does equal, in fact, the cost of the coins on the market at that time.
That's the secondary market. We're only concerned with the primary market here because we're discussing the protocol, blockchain level protocol. So anything can happen in secondary markets, But in the two-tier perspective, we're concerned directly with the primary market, the price to the first coin holder.
So the primary market cost is essentially an identity. It's a definition. It has to be true that the price that you put in terms of capital costs and energy costs, that is the cost of that dash that you've mined. But that doesn't necessarily have to equal the cost on the market in the secondary markets.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So right, that's me halfway through. Do you want to play music for 2 minutes while everybody unfries their brains?
I think we barrel forward.
Yeah. Okay. Are you down with that, Peter? Can we just move into the second set?
Right. Okay. I'll play on. Right. Okay. What I'm going to do here is that this is the slide that I was referring to that earlier on that you might be interested in. So what we're just going to look at is the capital flows, first of all, from a micro perspective, that a single coin being purchased and how capital is moved from the investor's bank account into one dash coin. And I'm also going to illustrate how I don't think this idea that electricity, that we're paying too much to electric companies is relevant, because first of all, there isn't this notion of a company, and secondly, the electric company is just doing as a service that is a currency exchange service. It's not representing a cost. So if we follow the capital flows here, we start off with the green box. Those are the savings of the potential investor. Now remember, we're talking about the primary market here. So those people represent what we would call miners and what I would call primary buyers of the primary supply, the first people to buy the coin coming off the blockchain. So they take their $1,000, they pay it to the electric company, but it doesn't just disappear there. As with the holidaymakers getting their euros, the electric company gives them $1,000 worth of kilowatt hours back for that $1,000. So there's no net loss in terms of capital so far in the flow. Those kilowatt hours are then held by the investor as capital. They then get moved into hash rate as a medium by the proof of work algorithm. They now have $1,000 worth of hash rate. That hash rate, it represents the currency used by the primary market to acquire the coin. So they're going to enter into a bidding war with other buyers, and they're going to receive coin because of the way the pool system works. They're going to receive coin proportional to the amount of hash rate they have as capital. Then the coin comes back to their inventory, and the end result is that they've incurred no net loss. They've just simply moved $1,000 worth of their savings into $1,000 worth of Dash. Now, the reason I assert
the primary market.
The primary market, yeah. Now, obviously, they could go on and sell that in the secondary market in the exchange, and suddenly they don't get $1,000 for it, or they get twice, or whatever. That's a different story. But what I'm going to argue here is that at this point, at least, by definition of this being the last price paid for the coin, the value is $1,000. In the same way as a Jackson Pollock painting, if somebody says that's worth 500 million, the only reason they can say that is because the last time it got sold for 500. That's the last price somebody paid for it. Mm-hmm. So at this point, the primary buyer is in possession of a coin which had capital invested in it to the tune of $1,000. Right?
Okay, and now, just one point real quick. You said that this coin has a $1,000 value. That's the only word that I would disagree with at this point. I would say it has a $1,000 cost, and I think that's where the primary disagreement comes. I don't agree with everything in the Austrian School of Economics, but the subjective, that value is subjective is one thing that I definitely agree with. And by definition, that 1,000, that dash that person mined with $1,000 is not valued at $1,000, except for potentially that by that one miner themselves. So I would.
But who is going to be
that you
who
meant
is going to be the arbitrator of that value? You know, there is no arbitrator of value other than the market, and so far the market has paid $1,000 for that coin. You know, if you want to make it cheap, right, let's get rid of hash rate and allow people to acquire the coin for $1. All you're doing is throttling the blockchain's ability to absorb capital then, because that's the widget production model coming into play. See, make it all cheap so that we can produce coins cheaply. But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to absorb capital so that the coin can hold value. See, so efficiency is what I've written there. The input is the investor's savings. The output is the coin. So it's had to go through this capitalization process in order to have a value. But you're correct in what you say. It is the cost of the coin. But by definition of does cost represent price slide that I presented previously, in this particular case, because we're talking about the point of delivery, cost does equal price times units.
Okay.
So, and not only that, but we have a mechanism to feed this price, this value, through to the secondary markets and synchronize them, which is the difficulty adjustment. Anyway, I'll talk about that later. I'll go to the next slide, shall I?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Right. This is how it looks at the aggregate level. So what we have here is, can you actually see me next to the slide? Because I can see you guys.
Yeah, we can see you. You're looking good.
Okay. Right. This is the sort of Satoshi model, the reference standard, as it were, where you have full mining. So the entire blockchain is mined. And again, looking at it through the lens of this alternate archetype, the two-tier market archetype, what we have is our primary buyers lined up here with helmets on, and then the secondary buyers in the secondary markets down here. So these are most of the investors. So what happens is the secondary market transmits capital to the primary buyers, and the primary buyers transmit that capital into the blockchain. So more or less, notwithstanding mining profits and various little bits of friction along the way, the entire capital flow from these secondary markets finds its way into the blockchain as the marginal cost of mining, which, returning to the debate about does cost v price, we can define as primary price, or the marginal price of the coin in the primary market, right? Because all of this capital is being transmitted to the blockchain. If we then look at how Dash works, so here's how. Oh yes, what happens then is, if we look at, all I'm doing here is flipping it around. So the buyers in this case are the primary holders of coin, and they want to purchase dollar liquidity. So they're going to the exchanges because they want to purchase dollar liquidity. So we're just flipping it around. We're looking at it from the perspective.
Sorry to jump in here in the middle of that sentence. I just wanted to actually address, Pete, if you could put Michael Cluster's comment back up. I would like you to address this specific point, because I want to understand your position. And I think that Michael's making a good point here. So I'll just read it so that the listeners can hear. Essentially, the point Talk is making is that the price follows the hash rate. I believe it's quite the opposite. Hash rate follows price. So what Michael Cluster is saying is it's the secondary market that actually defines the price, and then the miners adjust their actions to the secondary market's price. by giving more or less hash rate. So could you, my little commentary aside, could you directly address Michael Cluster's comment here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that is true, because you can look at it from both perspectives. You can say, because there's a mechanism of difficulty adjustments that allows secondary markets, hype, speculation, whatever you want to call it. BlackRock comes along and announces they're going to invest in Dash. That has an effect on the secondary market. That then gets transmitted to the primary market, right? You can also, both things happen. The secondary market can be dominant, or the primary market can be dominant. So yes, you can definitely say what goes on in the secondary market drives the price in the primary market. But what I'm arguing is that having a corrupt capital plumbing system in your primary market will cause adverse speculative investment to occur in the secondary market. So even if you look at it from that perspective, then you're diminishing demand in the secondary market, because you're not running a tight ship, basically, and investors feel that their capital is better deployed in other coins that are more efficient, where there's no leakages. Then it doesn't really matter. In my opinion, you have to get the core protocol as efficient as possible at absorbing capital, and that then works for the secondary market as well. Then you've got other factors on top of that, because then if you get this right, then you can say you can start to promote what Dash is doing in terms of technology, in terms of diversifying itself from other coins, innovation, and all this stuff that is not to do with the primary market. That's all about the speculative price. So I would argue that this has to be got right for the secondary market to be buoyant.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for addressing that, and then continue on with what you were saying.
Okay. So this little slide here is just simply looking at things from the mind. This will become relevant in a minute. It's flipping it on its head, because we also have a situation where coin holders want to acquire dollar liquidity. So, for example, the miners want to acquire dollars to pay for their electricity and so on, because they're in this constant flow cycle, right? But note one thing: they're a homogeneous lot. So they're all more or less making a small profit, and this is a single block of miners. That's all I want to sort of mention just now. Right. Now, this is where I think that the capital leakage occurs, and this is what I think has been responsible for our cratering down through the market cap rankings, both in absolute terms. Okay, you could say that's general market flow, but we've also cratered in relative terms, relative to other proof of work coins and proof of stake coins. So what's happening here in the Dash, if we compare it to the reference model, is that the secondary market capital is coming in here, and only a fraction of it is reaching the blockchain to capitalize the blockchain. So you could notionally say that these 5 coins are being directly capitalized with the capital arriving at the secondary markets. These 6 are not, because these are being sent directly to masternodes and treasury, who are not paying anything to extract these coins from the chain, right? I know that at a technical level, this isn't the actual case, because every block gets mined, right? So every block has a cost. So this doesn't quite correctly represent what's happening at the technical level. I've written it this way because what happens is the hash rate that is available, the limited capital, if we see hash rate as capital, is spread across all the blocks. So you could also draw this as half full blocks, if you like, in terms of the amount of the proportion of capital arriving at the secondary markets that's being transmitted to the primary market. So what's happening to the rest of the capital that isn't going to the blockchain? It is being used to fund, how do I get back to this? Yeah, it's being used to fund these profits. Now these are near 100% profits because the masternode's cost that they incur of running the node is very small compared to the reward they receive. Now, you could say, right, what's the problem with that? Because the fact that masternodes are making these profits just means that, you know, it's going to attract, people are going to want to have a masternode and receive these profits. And you could also argue, as I think many people do, that this is the case, right? You could argue, right, let's just redefine masternodes as the primary supply, right? So, because when masternodes sell the coins, they're facing a wall of demand as well. So they're saying it's selling to the highest bidder in the secondary market. So, you know, what's the difference between the blockchain supplying the coin to the highest bidder and a masternode supplying to the highest bidder? Is the blockchain is just devolving that supply to the masternode and using them as the primary supply. You know, you could potentially see it that way. Now, I would say the problem with that is that you can't ignore the capital that's coming into the secondary market that's ending up as pure profit here. You know, it isn't just as simple as the blockchain devolving the primary source supply to the masternode, because that capital is going somewhere and it's leaving the network. It's going into the pockets of individuals that are essentially, as I demonstrated earlier, on a level playing field with anybody else out there. You know, okay, they got their 1,000 dash, but they paid for the 1,000 dash, but they've got 1,000 dash. So this new supply, they're in the market for it as same as anyone else. So they end up with all this profit. And even if you argue that masternodes hold and they don't sell, so let's say you say, well, it doesn't matter because masternodes, they always hold their rewards, they don't sell, right? I don't think that's true. But even if you did argue that, in accounting terms, when you account for the overall capital flows in the ecosystem, you've got to account for those profits. And those profits are still unrealized profits, even though they're not realized. They're still unrealized profits, so they're a kind of time bomb, if you like, and they're also not arriving at the blockchain. So the two problems I see with taking this perspective is, one, it works on a kind of emperor's clothes kind of basis, right? Because the people arriving at this at the secondary markets, they can't actually know whether the coin they're receiving is a primary bought, an authentic primary bought coin where the seller paid money for the coin, or if it's one of these ghost coins that never got capitalized in the first place, and that their dollars are not actually going into the blockchain, they're going to fund, you know, they're going off chain to fund these profits, right? They're leaving the ecosystem. So you can get away with it on an emperor's clothes sort of type basis, but I think what happens is, the market finds all sorts of organic ways to compensate for this and to account for this loss of capital to the ecosystem. So even if you argue that gaining rewards, having a masternode creates a demand for masternodes, ultimately it doesn't, because it leads to capital loss on the collateral that wipes out those rewards in dollar terms. The second problem is that it's once again those pesky spectators. You know, we're in an open market and there are people uninvested in Dash that we want to invest, and they may look at this and say, I don't like the capital flow plumbing that's going on here. I want a type ship to invest in where the capital is constantly cycled around and my coin will gain value rather than lose it. Now masternodes benefit from that too. You know, I would argue that that's what masternode, they don't want their collateral to lose value. So just returning to the little organic ways that the market finds to erode the capital, I think this is one of them. I've just thought of one, off the top of my head, which is going back to that slide I had earlier on where we flipped the perspective. We looked at coin holders seeking dollar liquidity. The Dash picture splits into two, where the Bitcoin one is homogeneous. What you have is one group, which are the miners, who are at a small profit, potentially. There might be a loss, there might be a profit. Anyway, they are penalized for selling below market price. Then you have this other group of holders.
I like how you represented this with a top hat, by the way. The Masternode. You forgot the monocle.
It's the only keynote shape I could find that remotely did the job. Well, anyway, what happens here, I think, is that this group here on the right are always going to outcompete the group on the left for this limited dollar liquidity, and that has the effect of chronically driving down the price, over time, of eroding the walls, you see. And I think that, as well as the various other points I've made, goes a long way to accounting for the cratering of market cap that we've seen and the loss of competitivity. What I would argue for is winding the Masternode reward right back to, say, 10% or something like that, so that we can optimize the blockchain's capacity for absorbing capital and recover buoyancy on the capital gain front, and sort of go back to basics as if you like, So that's basically that's the case. That was the last slide. That's the case. If you want to discuss away and.
Well, I actually have a video I'd like to show, Peter, that I think maybe gives a bit of insight into the argument you've made thus far, or if not insight, maybe just some. Let's just look right at it. Let's have a look.
Proof of stake is where you don't actually have electricity being used to mine the coin. I mean, you do, but it's a lot less. It's absolutely minimal what's actually being used. And based off of that, the hashes that are in the blocks are a lot weaker.
What do you mean by that?
So if you look at the hashes that are in the Bitcoin network, they're generated by ASICs, which they're generated by a lot of ASICs and really high quality ones. And so there's these numbers, and they're essentially random. And those are the proof of work numbers. And those numbers are the security of the network. They're literally the essence of the security.
So you're saying a weaker hash means a more easily attacked network?
Well, okay, so in the case of Dash, we base a lot of the technology off of those proof of work hashes. I randomize the Masternode lists with those hashes, and we organize quorums with those hashes. We do the instant transactions with those hashes. So it's just not feasible to do it with proof of stake, because then it would be weak. And so I would say that for most applications, proof of stake is okay. I have some other economic arguments against it, but we could get into those at another time. And then with Dash, I mean, you just couldn't do it, so it just has to be proof of work. So I definitely prefer proof of work because it allows the second tier to exist.
And then he gets into the economic argument right here. I would be interested, if you would be interested to go into them briefly, what are your economic arguments against proof of stake?
So just from an economic standpoint, and this is just theoretical, I would say that the electricity that's used to create the money on the network has something to do with the value of the money itself. Because people, when they use equipment to mine, they're not going to want to sell for a loss. And the loss would be calculated by their cost. And when your cost is nothing, you can stand to sell for a lot less. And so that's one side of it. The other side of it is involvement. With proof of work, you have two groups of people. You have the users and then you have the miners. And the miners are different people, and they're running different equipment. With proof of stake, you have users, and then you have the miners, which are also the users. So you have less people involved. And so less people means there's less interest, and that's also bad for currency. So I would definitely prefer it from an economic standpoint as well.
All right. So the reason that I showed that clip, what was that, Peter?
I've never seen that.
Oh, you hadn't? Oh, well, yeah. So essentially, Evan, and for anyone, Evan Duffield, the founder of Dash, that's who was in that clip. In that clip, he did express that he agreed with at least some of Peter's argument today, which is that the electricity acts as a creator of value for the coin. And yet we can also say that at the same time that Evan Duffield was saying we've got to have proof of work because, among other things, hash rate translates directly into the value of the coin. At the same time, Evan Duffield was also head honcho of Dash when masternodes were created and were given half of the block reward. And so I guess, could I say, or is it overly simplistic to say that maybe both arguments are right, that masternodes provide the foundational value of Dash, and also miners provide the foundational value of Dash, and so maybe treating them equally, maybe treating labor and capital equally, to put it in like the old sense, right? Labor versus capital, that treating them equally is the right answer?
I don't think it can be, because yes, they are both contributors to the network, but just because they're both contributors to the network doesn't mean you can treat them equally. If I go back to the slide, if you can nip back to the fundamentals one.
Well, I think we'll just rather, just for the sake of time here, so we'll say that. So Peter says no, that even though they can,
it has to be in proportion to the value that's contributed to the network. Miners are not contributing value to the network other than security as a byproduct. What they're doing is purchasing the coin. They're delivering capital and receiving coin in exchange for that capital. And blockchain's role of the proof of work algo is to record that fact. And the fact that it's recorded that that coin was paid for by that capital cost, by definition, forms the price in the primary market. And the mining difficulty level then has the job of transmitting that price to the secondary market, because if miners sell below cost, they go out of business. If they make supernormal profits, the theory of perfect competition, which you can look up in economic theory, makes sure that they're pushed out of the market as more economical miners come in. So it all points to the same thing for me.
I gotcha. And Ryan, what do you think? Could labor and capital be treated equally in this sense, basically how they used to be treated back when it was 45, 45, 10? Even if it were, even if the treasury were to be bigger, if it were, 40, 40, 20 or 35, 35, 30, are these a good idea?
Well, I have my concept of labor is actually the super block, the treasury contractors from the super block, so that like the treasury, and then capital would be the MNOs, and miners would be more, for me, miners are more analogous to the security. So a country pays for security in terms of like national defense and things like that. I don't view Dash as a company, so I think I agree with Peter in that respect. I view it as an economy with primary and secondary markets. I just wanted to say thank you to Peter for joining this. You've probably done more preparation work than anybody has done for this show. So
no, I'm delighted to be invited on.
Yeah, you're an extremely likable guy, so I want to agree with you. I can't say that your arguments have convinced me personally, but I do thank you for making those clear. And I like seeing people, I like seeing real faces, and that has been a benefit to this show, if nothing else, to just get to know, a longtime Dash member. You've contributed a lot to this project, and I'm sad to see, right now I'm trying to share my screen just because I do want to get captured where the voting does stand right now. Hang on just a minute. Let me finish doing my screen share so that we can get that on the show here. There we go. And I'll pull up the great. More button here.
Are Michael Cluster and XKCD the same person? Can someone tell me that? I know it's the same profile picture. Is it the same person?
I think it is, and I have no reason to think that it's not. So, and I think that he would probably say that as well. So we're actually bringing up his site here, if that is in fact the same person. And if it's not the same person, then he's got some explaining to do with that profile picture. So this is where the standings are right now. If we're looking at this proposal right here, the Treasury reallocation. So there are 485 yes votes, 126 no votes, and 52 abstains. It's not quite passing yet. You can see here that the net, I would call this net, by the way, instead of absolute yes, but the net vote is 359, and we need 373 to pass. So if Peter's arguments have convinced you, you have now 4 days to vote no for this proposal. And if you want to vote yes, then do that within 4 days. I'll just click through here just real quick to see, for those of us who haven't, or those people who haven't actually looked at the text, the proposal text, I'll show it on the screen here real quick.
Could I just mention one thing, that I'm still invested, just in case anybody's wondering, because obviously it would
have to be. Why else would you care? And not only care, but care a lot.
It would have been
That's something that
for me to present this argument if I wasn't invested myself. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. That's something that I was just saying to Peter right before the show, that I've noticed a groundswell of just these past 2 or 3 months. Prior to that, I would say relatively, the Dash space had been crickets for the most part for years. And these past 2-3 months, I have been sensing a groundswell of what I would call give a shitness. And you've really illustrated that today very well, Peter. So I want to echo Ryan's thanks for your preparation and reaching out and doxing yourself and presenting your argument today.
That's no problem. I'm pleased to have contributed and have put these arguments on record, for at least as a service to the community, if nothing else.
Great. I say we leave it at that. I don't want to give my counterpoints in this show. I'll have plenty of time to speak about my thoughts and views on this in the Utah Dash retreat that you saw in the intro. So I'd love to see everybody there. That will occur after the vote has taken place. So if I have anything to say, I'll just comment on the proposal again, but I'll leave the bulk of my opinions to our conference coming up.
Okay, well, good. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Peter. And for anybody, it looks like there are some additional unanswered questions. Peter, would you agree with them? You want to go through them?
I'm okay with going through them if you'd like. We didn't give enough probably time for the audience questions, and while we've got them on, we've already passed an hour a few times, and whatever you want, Amanda.
Well, I guess I'll leave it to Peter. Peter, would you rather answer these people's questions on, say, Discord, or would you rather answer them here and now?
Just quickly, somebody asked what I would think would happen to the price of Dash if more was spent on mining rewards, right? Just to rephrase that, the people that are spending money on mining are the primary market investors. So they are the people investing in Dash. It's not Dash that's spending any money on, in a literal sense. According to the sort of philosophical widget production model, it's not like that. What I would think would happen if we wound the masternodes back to 10%, ramped the mining right up again and even when the Treasury back, so that the only thing that was funded was Dash Core Group, because I think we've got to keep the nature of Dash, we've got to keep development going. We ramped the mining back up. I think we would be able to arrest the cratering of market cap and reacquire competitivity. I think we would get, hopefully, a fairly big raft of speculative investment coming in. Right? I can't predict the future. I'm just saying, according to the two-tier market archetype that I've presented here, this is what should happen. That we arrest the descent, we start to go back up and become more competitive again, because we are keeping much more of that capital in the Dash ecosystem, transmitting it to the blockchain and maintaining the value of the marginal price at the blockchain level as they come off the blockchain. That's what I think should happen, right?
Okay, so then, so I think the way that question was phrased was, Peter, what do you think would happen if the mining rewards are decreased? So is it safe to say then you believe that the value, the price in USD or whatever of a Dash will continue to go down if the mining rewards are
accelerate our cratering through the rankings? We'll go on to page 2 and we'll end up just, what will happen is some masternodes will sell, new masternode people will come in as they get cheaper, and they'll, oh great, I'm a masternode, I'm going to have a time being a masternode. Then it'll go down a bit, then they'll sell, then new people will come in, and there won't be many people who have been there from start to finish saying, wait a minute, I'm seeing a long-term pattern here. And I just want to say one last wee thing, which is that one of the reasons I didn't really take part in this debate much up until now is because 3 years ago, when I was arguing this case with, when Ryan Taylor was first proposing it, I was arguing against the reward change. I argued quite vociferously this case that I'm making now, but at the same time I thought, well, I might be wrong, right? They might be right that doing this creates more demand for masternodes and we buoy the market cap. One of the reasons I've come back and done this presentation is because that didn't happen. Over the last 3 years, we've lost competitivity with other proof of work coins. We've lost competitivity with proof of stake coins. So I just thought, well, there's a case for making this argument again, given that we've had 3 years of already trying it and it's not doing what it was purported to do. So that's one of the reasons I feel a bit more confident even now, more than I was even then, in saying that we need the mining ramp right back up to stabilize the market cap. That's just my opinion. I don't want anybody, I'm not telling anybody what to do, right? Not investment advice, as they say, but according to the archetype I presented, that's what should happen.
And do we have any more of those unanswered questions there, Pete, that we can get Peter to answer while we have him? I think there was one from one time that said, sorry, I meant to record it. I can't even remember it exactly now. Okay.
Is it the, why would it be so bad to have low price in the primary market one?
No, I thought it was, can hash rate be considered a fixed rate something when the difficulty is always changing or something?
Oh.
I don't know.
That was actually from XKCD. That's why you're not finding it.
Is it this one?
Oh, maybe that one.
And does hash rate need to be considered a fixed supply medium in order for?
No, it doesn't. And another point that may interest people is that if energy prices start skyrocketing, that is actually a good thing for proof of work networks, because we're not actually interested in the amount of hash rate that arrives at the blockchain. We are interested in the capital value of that hash rate. So if a kilowatt hour at the moment costs $1 and you need 1,000 kilowatt hours to produce one coin, to capitalize one coin, right, that's going to cost $1,000. If a kilowatt hour rises to $100, then you only need 10 kilowatt hours to capitalize that same $1,000 worth of coin at the primary market. So rising energy prices means less energy is required for the same amount of capitalization in the primary market. So it's not a problem for us if that happens.
Okay. And were there any other questions? If we haven't posted your question, I guess I would say, would you just like quickly repost it so that we don't need to scroll back and potentially miss it?
Sorry, post what now?
Oh, I was just saying, for any commenters who've not yet had their question asked, it would be easier for us to find it if they just repost it right now.
And while they're doing that, maybe you could give your closing just summary. If somebody wants a 2-minute snapshot of.
Yeah. Okay.
Down for myself. Okay. So then, the summary is the significant economic role of the proof of work protocol is not security, but delivery of the new supply to paying customers in a trustless market. We call those customers miners in a metaphorical analogy with mining, but that's all it is, a metaphor. They are, in fact, purchasers of the emerging blockchain supply, and the price they pay is defined as the cost of mining divided by the number of units sold. And masternodes are not participants in that market. They are not going to the primary market to buy any coin. Therefore, there isn't an economically sustainable basis to send the primary supply to masternodes beyond the numerically measurable value that they contribute to the network.
Okay.
That's basically a summary of the case.
Well, I think that's just as good a spot as any to wrap today up. I hope I can say with confidence that Toknormal will be on Discord at least for the next 24 hours or so before he disappears into the annals of Glasgow again. We hope that he does not. We hope he sticks around this time. And so,
supply of holy water at the ready.
Excellent. Righteous. Okay, so any remaining questions, do go hit up Toknormal on Discord. And thank you for joining us and your participation today. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Bye.
Thanks
We'll see
very
you
much.
later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.